Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, this week we take to the skies yet again to cover the 2012 film by Lucasfilm's Red Tails. And joining us, we have from the fabulous Damcasters podcast, it's none other than Matt Bone. Welcome to the show.
Hello, gents. Thank you so much for having me. We've been talking about this for so long.
So long. So long.
3 years or something nearly. It must be.
Yeah, it's been a while, and we haven't been able to put it off any longer.
Well, it's part of our unofficial Aviation April that we've been doing.
We're trying to make up for the dire lack of aviation films we've done over the last year.
We're really loud lovers.
Because we seem to have had a dearth of them. Like, we just seem to not have done many at all. But it's not by plan. It's completely accidental. We've been a bit more organized this year, actually. We've tried to plan ahead a little bit, but normally we're just like, what are we doing this week? And then we have to pick something out of our arse.
Don't be organized. Organized is no fun. That's opening the curtain. No one wants to see behind that.
Don't tell the listeners how it's run, Matt. Crikey. Anyway, so maybe we should just jump into production first this week. And I'm on it this week. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the film's produced by Lucasfilm of Indiana Jones and Star Wars fame. I'm sure, if you've looked at a screen in the last few years, you'd have seen Star Wars. You know what it is. And this was the last film that Lucasfilm made before their Disney merger in 2014. And Red Tails at the moment is available on Disney Plus. It's a lovely Blu-ray rip. And the development of the film actually started in 1988. And George Lucas supposedly heard of the story of the Tuskegee Airman from photographer George Hall. And it comes across for him as like a real passion project. When I was watching the special features from the film, he says, "I'm not a flyer, but I love airplanes. I love P-51s. I want to be here. This is something I'm really passionate about. I've been working on it for 20 years. It really seems that this is something really important to Lucas." And he envisaged the film to be like a long-form 3 to 4 hour epic, according to Rick McCallum, who was a long-term collaborator with Lucas. And he said this in a 2012 interview: "We wanted to start in the United States and show the full racism these guys had to go through, then to go through the heroic story that we're telling now, and then come back and do the beginning of the civil rights movement. But it was just so unwieldy, and also at that time, there was no way a roadshow 3-hour movie in American cinemas would work. Every epic film had been a financial disaster, and we felt there wasn't an audience that we could get the film out to." I think that's fair, but then I think some of that remnants of the 3-4 hour epic is still in there, but we'll talk about that more as we go along. So the story was condensed down, and a script was finally written in 2007 by the Oscar-winning screenwriter John Ridley. He won an award for his screenplay of 2013's 12 Years a Slave. He also worked on the scripts for Three Kings and the Jimi Hendrix biopic, Jimmy All By My Side. And Ridley had help from Aaron McGruder, a screenwriter and cartoonist who created the amazing Boondocks. I love that. And the Adult Swim's Black Jesus sitcom, which is actually really great too. And production began
Bit of a link for the film as well.
Yeah, it is a bit. And production began in 2009 and directed by Anthony Hemingway. And he's in his directorial debut, having cut his teeth on so many American TV projects. I just had to condense them down. The Wire, Treme, Battlestar Galactica, Falling Skies, Heroes, an episode of Community, and many, many, many more. Like, it's incredible what the guys worked on. And reshoots were directed by Lucas himself. Cinematography was done by John Aronson, who worked on American TV before. I think Red Tails is probably his biggest credit, but he worked on Suits and American Horror Story. Music is by two-time Oscar nominee Terence Blanchard. He's an American jazz musician. His award nominations come from his work on 2 Spike Lee joints, being Black Klansman and The Five Bloods, but he also composed the scores to Miracle at Santana, Inside Man, Love and Basketball, Malcolm X. His credits are insane. Some amazing films on there. Filmed across Europe in location in Slovenia, Croatia, Czech Republic, Italy, England, and then at the Skywalker Ranch and Ann Hamilton Air Force Base in California too. And the aerial scenes were shot using a mixture of CGI, green screen, and gimbal mounted cockpits. I'm sure we'll come back to that. But the cast were also taken up in P-51s for experience. One of the actors saying it was just like a video game. It was Tristan Wilde saying that in a special feature. But they were also put into a boot camp, and it was quite funny if you watch the special features. They're all running around, being very put upon. And the visual effects were by Up. They worked on All Quiet on the Western Front, Jungle Cruise, City 44, Snowpiercer. I mean, these guys' credits are insane as well. And there's a really good show reel that they put together on YouTube showing everything that they did. And you'd be surprised, even trees in this film are CGI. I was so surprised that you couldn't just find you couldn't find a hill with some trees on it. It's a CGI the trees. We're in that real early 2010s, late noughties thing of everything on screen being CG, which I think's a really interesting period of cinema. And real Tuskegee Airmen were part of the advisory team. Veteran Lee Andrew Archer served as an advisor. He unfortunately passed away at the age of 90 while the film was in post-production, and the credits tribute him. But the film took time to show in the special features, the documentary Making of Docs, that they really had a lot of time with surviving airmen. They had Q&A sessions. I think they had a meeting at the Skywalker Ranch, and they were showing all the artwork they'd made for the film. And it was really interesting seeing the cast having real discussions with the men that they were portraying. I think that's quite rare for a film of this nature, especially now as we're getting away from the war itself, and we're unfortunately losing veterans. That was really probably quite an enriching experience for everyone. But in terms of budgeting, so the film was touted to studios for a long time. Lucas couldn't find any backers, so he funded it himself. He put in 58 million of his own money and a further 35 million into marketing costs, and the film only made 50.3 million back at the box office, so it was considered a flop. It didn't even make its budget back.
It seems wild to me that Lucas shopped around a film like this and he couldn't get any backers for it, especially when in the 90s there'd already been Tuskegee Airman, the HBO, I think it was HBO, the TV movie, which was great, that told a lot of the story, and he couldn't find any backers. That's so odd.
I don't get it.
I think it's a weird time because this is just post prequels. Yeah, post prequels.
Just post the Star Wars prequels, and everyone's like, "Oh God, no."
Yeah, and I think that kind of plays into it.
Perhaps.
They made a bucket load of money. The last one was everyone was just sighing that it was over. To be fair, I did that when Phantom Menace came out, and then sighed for the next 10 years. But I think that didn't help because when at the time, if someone hears George Lucas Passion Project, and they've just had a decade of the prequels, is that the things because you got to think about around about the same time. This is the Marvel resurgence as well. This is same sort of time as Iron Man 2 is getting prepped, Captain America First Avengers getting prepped. Everybody's seeing a sort of shift, which may explain why Red Tails looks like it does. But that's always just been my take on why.
I think that's right.
There's some bits that scream like Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, where the CGI is so visible that it isn't even like a stylistic choice. It's just, we haven't really filmed this bit. We're going to put the church in behind them anyway, or something like that. And it's
like the most weird looking parts of iRobot. It's like that to me. In places. And for 2009, Matt, you're right. It is all coming in. You've got the whole Marvel thing, and that's changing the way studios think about pictures. So maybe you've got a point there. So maybe we should go on to a retro review that we always do. Oh no, before that, sorry. So the film was released on January the 10th in 2012 in the UK. Sorry, January the 10th, 2012 in the US, and June the 6th, 2012 in the UK. And I remember it having a massive advertising thing. I remember there being posters everywhere. There was trailers. I think I watched a thing on BBC. You remember Film 2000? Must have been Film 2012 or something with Jonathan Ross or the woman who replaced her. I can't remember. Or it might have been the revolving. That was it. Claudia Winkleman. It might have been her at the time, actually.
I took a day off work to go see it.
Oh wow. Yeah.
How often do you get to see a Second World War aerial film? And it was just like I was like the only person in the cinema, which is great because it means you get to stretch out and you can munch popcorn and go away. But yeah, we'll get onto that.
Well,
as
that's the whole thing. You can tell a movie's going to be a dud financially if you're the only person in the cinema. Anyway, so the retro review this week comes from Empire magazine by Ian Freer.
Good critic. Good critic.
So I've truncated it, but I'll read you a couple of paragraphs. Red Tails pitches a band of plucky rebels in inferior vehicles against a dastardly empire and packs it with all the patented Lucas trademarks: a love of speed and action, moral certainty, cloth-eared dialogue, easy-to-grasp characters, idealized heroism to create an entertaining slice of boys' own adventure that never realizes the full potential of the subject matter. Just as Star Wars is an upgrade of Flash Gordon serials, Red Tails is a fighter ace movie that 60 years ago might have been directed by Howard Hawks or Nicholas Ray. It upgrades the old miniatures on wire and stock footage combo for exciting digital dogfights, which mostly feel real and stirring. The flyers are likable, but a set of stock characters that could have been done with more complexity. In the air, they never know fear of vulnerability. On the ground, they can be reduced to a single phrase: drink problem, God-fearing kid who becomes a man, that nearly makes this Hot Shots Part 3. A fun B-movie with a valid approach, but you can't help feel that there were richer pickings to be had.
There.
So yeah, I agree with the review. I do think that it is a B-movie really at heart.
We definitely have to come back to that because I have the Hawks thing, I think, is probably the bigger shadow over this film than a lot of people give it credit for, and that came up in a few decent reviews. I think Ebert mentioned it as well, that it had that Hawk scene sort of feel to it. But we'll come back to that.
It does. I get what you mean. But the one word reviews this week, I mean, I think we had a bumper of responses because not only did we share our one word review, we had the Damcasters social media were also doing the same thing, and I think we probably had over about 200 responses, probably all in all. But just to start off with, and I'm sure Matt's got some of his own from his side. So we had a few here, in no particular order as always. Paul Johnson goes with craptastic. Rob Hughes goes with cartoon. Andy L, disappointing. Rubber goes with lacking. Casey O'Hare goes with enjoyable. And Jim DeCoo says, sorry for 2 words. He says, terrible script. And I'll round out our one with Dan Steele that says comic book.
The gist is there. There's quite a few. I loved it, which was quite nice. But the cartoony thing comes up a lot. And then there's some really long, really vitriolic ones. And I think the one people couldn't restrain themselves, which is another thing that I think we can come back to a little bit later, because nobody sets out to make a bad movie, and nobody sets out to make a movie that nobody responds to. People definitely respond to this one. And I think the one word reviews were interesting because there was surprisingly more like okay-ish words than there were of just shite, which is
yeah. No, I think you're right. It's the enjoyable thing that comes back. There were a few of those, and after watching it, I think I can see that, because we watched Flyboys a couple of weeks ago, and I was sitting there thinking, I cannot get through this. Like I can't be doing with it. I wanted to put a metal spike through my skull to end the suffering. But with this one, I'm like, yep, cool. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens to these people, because they're just infinitely more likable than anyone in Flyboys was.
I had a similar experience there where I was like, I remember this not being great, but let's go into it. So I watched it and I enjoyed it. As a film, it was fine. But I'm wondering now that you've said that, has the fact that we watched Flyboys last week really coloured how we've viewed this film? Like, has it altered? Has it shifted the scale for us? If we hadn't seen Flyboys last week, would we be going, "This is fucking awful"?
Well, I always hated Flyboys, but I'd only ever seen like bits of this, because my earliest memory of it was my uncle had it on DVD, and at the time he was the guy with the Blu-ray player. He was the guy with the surround sound. So he was like, "Oh, check out the sound on this." And we watched some of the aerial sequences, and I was like, "Oh, that looks good." But then I went to uni and completely forgot that wars and films existed for like 3 years because I was trying to become an actor. And then I came back to this movie like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, actually, it's all right. You know, I've got gripes, but it's all right.
That's the thing Lucasfilm missed. The poster should have said Red Tails, better than Flyboys. And yeah, they would have made a fortune.
And it's not got James Franco in it. And I'm like, ooh.
So in terms of cast, I'll run through them, but it's an ensemble cast. So I mean, we talked about Battle of Britain last week, and that was a huge ensemble cast, and we've got kind of the same thing going on here. So there's certain characters in there that get a little bit more screen time than others, but they all, I think, all in all, they do a really good job with what they're given. So we have Terrence Howard as Colonel A.J. Bullard. In terms of previous war movies, his main one would be Heart's War in 2002. And then he was also in The Butler in 2013, a historical drama. We've got Cuba Gooding Jr. as Major Stantz. He was in the 1995 Tuskegee Airman TV movie. He was also in Men of Honor in 2000, Pearl Harbor in 2001, The Way of War in 2009, and then this is really his first non-direct-to-DVD or video film in quite a while, because of various things. And then he was also in The Butler in 2013. It's going to be a recurring thing because there's a number of members of this cast that pop up again later on. Nate Parker as Captain Easy, Martin Easy Julian. He was in The Tunnel Rats in 2008, a Vietnam War movie, and has directed and starred in Birth of a Nation in 2016. David Olweo as Lightning, First Lieutenant Joe Lightning, who is another one of those key main players. He was in Last King of Scotland, The Butler, and had an extensive voice role in Star Wars Rebels as well. A little Star Wars link there. Tristan Wilds plays. I think he did. I can't remember. I haven't watched it in quite a while, but he's in at least 20 episodes.
He's great. British actor as well. I had to go and check that he was British because I was like, hang on. His British accent must be fantastic. So I was like, I didn't know he was American. And I got it the other way around. It was amazing. Great actor.
Who else we got? Then we have a run of rappers and singers, which make nice inclusion, and they do an absolutely fine job in terms of acting, which can't always be said is something that is an easy transition to make. Looking at Harry Styles, we've got Neo as Smokey. You can't resist it. Who was also Specs in Battle Los Angeles in 2011. Elijah Kelly as Joker, who also in The Butler in 2013. Marcus T. Polk, who was the Deacon or Deke. We've got Leslie Odom Jr., who was Declan Winky Hall. He was in Harriet in 2019 and also Hamilton in 2020. And then Michael B. Jordan. Yeah. And then we've got Michael B. Jordan as Bumps, Maurice Bumps Wilson, who is I think he's the first of the airmen to die in action.
It's funny because he's the star, isn't it? Like he's a proper star now, and he's like jostled in right in the middle. I'm like, it's Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah,
I'm going to geek out about him in a minute. Yeah, because
absolutely.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, go on. No, I've got it. Mike, right now when this film's getting made, he's just appeared in Friday Night Lights. He's the new quarterback for East Dillon. He's just made Fruitville Station, and he's coming off the back of, I think he's only in The Wire for the last season, and he doesn't make it to the end of the season if memory serves, right? And he's one of these actors that as soon as he shows up in this, because he literally walks in and goes, "Hi," everybody takes the piss out of him, and then you don't see him again till he's dead. Spoilers, ladies and gentlemen, right? But as soon as he walks in, there's him and Leslie Odom Jr. The camera just gravitates to them, and that's something that Jordan has in spades. And there's this cat. Well, go on, Matt. I'm going to stop because I love him. I think he's
great.
He's incredible. Really good. Yeah.
Within the next 2 years, he's in half a dozen Marvel movies, and Creed, Space Jam 2. Fahrenheit
His
451.
cameo in Space Jam 2 is the best part of that movie.
Exactly, I had to
where
throw
Daffy
it in.
Duck's like,
That's why it's in there, Rob.
Jordan, and he comes in, and they're like, "Who's this?" He's like, "I'm Michael B. Jordan." Great cameo, great.
And he's
cameo.
also part owner of AFC Bournemouth.
Is he now? I didn't know that. Wow.
Yep. According to Wikipedia, hand to God, that I mean,
Anthony's
I could
a
play off on
cherry.
that one.
Wow.
I haven't.
Amazing.
I haven't been keeping up with my my Bournemouth backroom staff, but that's what the internet tells me.
Wow.
Then we got Method Man as Corporal Sticks.
Incredible.
Grammy Award-winning rapper, just knocking it out the park again.
I swear he's only in it in like one scene when he sticks his head
He has
around
like four lines or something.
And he's just like, dude.
He pulls a bit of like pipe out of a kitty hawk, and I was like, I don't have face.
Yeah, he's like, he says, "Did someone throw a train at you?" I think is his like only line.
Yeah,
but it's a good scene.
He's got the one when the Mustang's shown up, when it's like black
when
pilots and red tails. You can't say we're not distinctive or something like that. Bad line, but he delivers it really well.
But Method Man is insane to be in this movie. Sorry, it's
just
I'm
anyway,
so excited when
then we've got Bryan Cranston playing the evil Southern U.S. Army colonel, Saving Private Ryan, Argo, North and South in the 80s. Some of his roles, but everyone knows him for Breaking Bad, Malcolm in the Middle. If you don't know who Bryan Cranston is, I mean, where have you been in the last?
I know, right?
Years?
To be fair, my favorite Bryan Cranston role is when he shows up in How I Met Your Mother as the phallic obsessed architect. It's comedy. It's comedy gold. He's fantastic. There you go.
I like when he just pops up in Saving Private Ryan for like 2 minutes because it's so weird.
Yeah. I think everybody pops up in Saving Private Ryan for 2 minutes.
Don't they?
But I still think Nathan Fillion steals the show.
Is Bryan Cranston the Method Man of Saving Private Ryan?
Oh, he might be. Yeah, he might
couldn't
be.
Yeah.
Good shout.
That's true.
Just to round out, we've got Andre Royo as Coffee, the aircraft ground crew sergeant, and then we've got Daniela Rua as Sophia, the love interest for Junior. Not Junior, Lightning.
Yeah.
And that basically rounds out a very big cast.
We've just got to give a shout out to Gerald McRaney, who
absolutely as General Luntz. Yeah,
it's very small role, but he died a few years ago now, didn't he? But he's one of those people that sort of makes everything a little bit better when he shows up.
Yeah, he has gravitas, doesn't he? He's got a real presence, and he plays that almost fatherly sort of paternal general character really quite well. His scenes with Terrence Howard are quite good, actually.
This is one of the few films where I really did like Terrence Howard in, because I'm usually not a huge fan of his work, but it's one of the few ones where I think actually they did cast well. And this one of my crux of the movies is where of this film is that the cast is far better than anything else going on, really. And without this cast, this film would be 100 times worse.
You couldn't put this cast together today for all the money. Okay, you could get Nate Parker
for various reasons,
for bus fare these days. But the rest of them, not a chance anywhere. Because I know we're going to get into this, but you just look at that cast list and you're like, wow, and it all comes down to script and other things. But it shows it. Sorry. No, go on, mate.
Sorry. No, it just shows how for me that the passion project thing comes through, that Lucas or the casting director under Lucas's vision or whoever's vision has gone out and said, right, I want the top chaps for this. I don't want the B list, I don't want the C list, I want the up and comers, I want the guys who are going to really carry this movie. And it feels like they got their first picks for a lot of the guys.
Well, watching all the little special featurey things on this, Lucas was a Wire fan. He wanted Hemingway because he directed most of the last few episodes of it. And he said to him, I want those kids. So Hemingway basically rang round all the guys have been, because you've got Tristan McWilds as well. who's in The Wire. He was great in The Wire because he was Michael Lee. Yeah, Lee, who I'm happy to spoil this film. I'm not going to spoil The Wire if you haven't seen it. It's heartbreaking what happens to him. But
Yeah.
Put it like this, Marvel money can't get you this cast now.
Yeah.
No,
Not now.
it's true.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's
In
quite,
parallel,
it's ironic.
if we look at the Tuskegee Airman movie of '95, you've got Lawrence Fishburne, Cuba Gooding Jr., Andre Braugher, Courtney B. Vance, John Lithgow, and that's a really strong cast too. So,
shout out to Christopher McDonald as well,
and Christopher McDonald as as the major.
Yeah,
and it's that I think this is way off cast now, but you can consider Red Tails almost as the sequel to that movie, in a way. And
that's fair.
It's been a few years since I've seen that movie, but it always stuck with me as being a really quite workmanlike, really well made movie that tries to tell the story in a bit more detail, like their origin.
And
I couldn't find it to watch it before this. Sorry.
You can get it on DVD. The DVD is really expensive of it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and the thing, expensive as in we're used to now spending like a few quid on the DVD.
Right,
still,
I get it. Yeah.
This is like £15. My goodness. The thing that film does well is its budget dictates it has to be set in Alabama.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
So it's just the bit at the end, which is basically the Berlin raid at the end, and it's better for it because you understand what these guys are willing to do to become fighter pilots.
Yeah.
Red Tails fails because I feel they introduce these guys wrong.
Well, they don't really introduce them at all, do they?
Exactly, right?
Oh my God, you're gonna hate my favorite scene then.
No, that's fine. Yeah, my
this is gonna be good.
We're probably jumping all over the place now, but the thing is, right, your first introduction to these guys is board in P-40s on an interdiction.
Yeah.
Right? Which in Italy is the vital stuff because it's all about supply. Right. So this movie starts in 1944. So you have essentially, this is the same time as Catch-22 set. Right. Yeah, it's that period. So you are months away from the Battle of Berner Pass. You've got basically, the timelines in this are all over the place. Like, suddenly it's Anzio, and then it's like months later, but then it's back in it's nuts. But this idea of them flying clapped out, hand-me-down P-40s.
Yeah, literally said in dialogue.
Yeah, and, it's happening. Yeah. The P-40 stayed around in the MTO for as long as it did because it was really good at doing that sort of thing, especially the later models, heavily armed, heavily armored. And, basically you can hit them with a wrench and it bursts back into life again. It's a classic Curtiss fighter. And, I know the P-51 is sexy. I know it's, the Cadillac of the sky, all of that bit.
Yeah.
But it introduces them as not the college-educated, highly selected group of pilots who knew exactly what they were there to do. Which is why the far better documentary that Lucasfilm made at the same time as this movie is called Double Victory, right? That's on YouTube. Go watch it. It's incredible. And we're going to come to this again later. You can tell what some of the problems with this film is because on that video, the comments are turned off.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So So it's me jumping around, but I just feel that what the Tuskegee Airmen did really, really well was show how hard these guys had to fight to get into the cockpit in the first place, let alone get P-40s, let alone be deployed. That's the thing that I think is missing because it's a lot of the pilots in this come across as Top Gunny, and I mean that in a derogatory term. because pilots don't act like Val Kilmer and Tom Cruise. We kind of wish they might, because that would be cooler, but they're pros. These guys come across as movie pilots.
They're cliches, aren't they, really? They're just cliched characters.
The actors are too good for that.
It is. And that's one of the criticisms at the time. People were saying it was too Top Gun when it shouldn't have been. And I completely see that as well. But anyway, talk about Kitty Hawks there. I think we should move on to the Alley Tally this week.
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
So, as always, we let our guest kick off the Alley Tally. Matt, the floor is yours. I
really like the Kitty Hawk. I think some of the best bits in this movie are before they get the P-51s. My big gripe about airplane movies is, we're sitting here on Zoom, right? There's the three of us. That is the shot of every pilot in a cockpit in every airplane movie ever made. It's
that's going to make all podcasting sound way more exciting than it is.
Well, it's three good-looking chaps with headphones on here. We should have the videos recording. But it's that, right? So it's this.
It's a very good point.
Head and shoulders back onto the. Nolan plays with it in Dunkirk by putting the camera quite low down, so you're sort of looking out of the top, or you're looking in, which I really liked. Not a film I like, but those angles were great, and how they did it, all of that. But the thing that's great about in this is you get to see one of the features that Curtis put in that whole range of fighters, which was the cutout on the Razorback behind him. So in a Spitfire and a Hurricane, it's quite a high, almost like a racing car, like rollover hood that's behind. Curtis cut that back. So you've got these two sort of indents going behind the rear fuselage to just give really, really good rearward facing visibility. Another film that actually does it quite well is the Flying Leathernecks back in the day, because you get Flying Tigers even, which they've got that as well. Only it's cut like massively big. It's funny, but I think that shows that if you know the Kitty Hawk, these sort of things. It had great visibility. It was couldn't climb worth a damn, but it could dive really well. And it could turn pretty well, which is why it was so useful against the Zeros, because they switched the tactics around to make sure that it didn't get into a sort of climbing or turning back, even though I said it was good at turning. It is. But it's just those scenes that, when they're, we will not talk about the accuracy of that train blowing up, but that scene is pretty good fun. And again, that's
full of explosives, that train.
Yeah.
Even apparently the engine.
The engine was full of explosives.
Yeah, man.
But we'll come back to that in scenes. But it's that low level thing. That's what the Kitty Hawks were doing. Over Salerno, there was waves of them because it's got good range. It's got a good loiter. The Allison engine in the front of it, much like the 1710 that was in the early Mustangs as well. You throttle that thing back and you can go forever, right? It's great. That base of it is really, really good. But the problem is they're just dogging on it in the whole time, because in the story, they have to get the Mustangs.
Yeah.
And in real life, they get P-39 Air Cobras. They get P-47s. It's not this jump from the P-40 to the P-51D, because they get Bs and Cs beforehand as well. But again, you listen to all the little extras, and it's basically George Lucas beating off over Mustangs.
He is. He really is. Like, when I was young, it's the best part. It was the plane to have, and I'm like, okay, that's nice, but come on.
He's a man who shaped my childhood, and I hate him.
I get it. Yeah, No, I get it. It's like it's for me. For him, for Lucas, it feels like this is what Saving Private Ryan was for Spielberg. I want to remake those movies I grew up with, and it feels the same way. And I'm with you on the Kitty Hawk. My pick this week was the Kitty Hawk, because you rarely see like other American fighters in any media apart from the Mustang. I mean, maybe back in the 40s, 50s, they did, but not after, maybe the 80s, 90s. It feels like it's the only thing going.
Spielberg and Ray Hanna ruined it for Empire of the Sun, right? As soon as you
that's it. That's probably the benchmark point.
As soon as Ray Hanna skip bombs that hangar and then flies back waving at Christian Bale, every Second World War movie has to have a stripped all metal P-51D. That's it. It's Spielberg's fault, and it's Ray Hanna's as well. Not that I will ever say anything bad against Ray, because he's
hear that,
a god. Hear that,
Stephen, you're on blast.
Yes, but that's it. And I think even the flying scenes with the P-40 are better. But again, we're doing the kit bit. There's lots of trucks in this, so I assume you guys are going to like the trucks.
Of course, I am. Yeah. Why would I not?
No Betty's.
But no, I just like seeing the Kitty Hawks because it's completely different to what you see. I mean, the Kitty Hawks in Pearl Harbor as well.
We don't talk about
I like
that.
seeing. No, we don't. No, not really. We've done it twice. We're not doing it again. I like. How
do you think about ending Aviation April, Rob?
Oh God, Matt, no, please. I'll get that metal spike out again.
Just do Midway again, and you'll be fine.
Oh Christ, yeah. But I like the fact they made the Kitty Hawk replica to go on the gimbal. They're not cheaping out with, like just a little bit of the cockpit. They were making the whole thing to show, and I think that really enriches the movie. Another thing I'll quickly go into before I let Mr. Moss get involved is the mise en scène. I'm nicking it off Matt this week. Everything about the scenery is fantastic. The sets look very detailed. There's these little personalizations in there that you blink, you miss them. They've all got their own flying jackets. They're personalized. The ground crew in HBTs, the ground crew in hot weather caps. They're in winter jumpers and winter uniforms when it should be colder. All those tiny little things there that make a movie, for me, from a kit point of view. The war progresses, the kit progresses. It's a really nice little thing. Not many films do it because they don't have the budget. This one does. And that's another, it will come back in final thoughts. But because the production value is so high and I really enjoyed it, it's a detriment to everything else. And in terms of trucks, there's Jeeps, there's Dodge WC-52s, there's Dodge ambulances. Brilliant to see them. I thought there might have been a short Canadian wheelbase Dodge in the background because my dad used to have one, and I obsessed over whether it was.
Yes, he would have been happy.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was a WC-52. The angle was just weird that it was shot at, so it wasn't.
We pause these movies in completely different places.
And the Germans on the ground look fine. They're in field grey uniforms, and I'll let them off. It's a very 40s trope, but they look okay to me. I'm not a Kriegsmarine guy. Not Kriegsmarine, Christ. I'm not a Luftwaffe guy. I wouldn't know what a Luftwaffe ground crew look like. I'm sure it's fine. I like seeing the German fire brigade putting out fires. That was nice because you never see that. But it looked okay to me. I'm not.
We haven't seen this much German airfield since War Eagles Dare.
God, no, we haven't actually. Yeah, it's very true. It's very rare you get to see a German airstrip in anything. So it was nice to see it. That's my alley tally, really. I love the mise en scène this week. I think it's fantastic.
The mise en scène is nice. I agree. It's one of the pluses of this film, definitely. In terms of alley tally for me, simple. It's Junior's Buck Rogers X-38 disintegrator that he has in his flying jacket. There's a good look charm. Yeah. It's a nice, and I feel like that's another Lucas thing that he's wanted to get in there as like a little nod back to what he remembers from his childhood and that kind of nostalgia for early sci-fi and that kind of thing.
The only thing I'd say about all the kit is they are very clean throughout it. It looks worn, but Ramatelli was an ALG. It was the Foggia complex was built really, really quickly. It was really muddy. I don't like the way all those airplanes are all lined up perfectly right next to the runway, both on the German airfield and the American one. That's not what Ramatelli looked like at all. But it was that's by the by. But yeah, it's that's But you're watching it, and you're right. The mayor's everyone. I can't say it, but because everyone has to drink whenever Matt says mise en scène.
Mise en scène, yeah.
Hey, away we go.
The Foff whiskey stocks are running dry.
Oh my god, get it on a t-shirt already. Come on.
But yeah, that's the thing. It's they look great. They're just a bit clean.
Yeah.
And yeah, the funny thing is what rewatching bits of the other Tuskegee Airman movie, all the stuff is like box fresh in that. There's the scene when the bomber pilots show up going, "Who are the guys that saved us?" on that. Their sheepskin jackets are like perfect.
Yeah, zero creases.
It's like they've just literally taken them out of the plastic and said, "Okay, boys, put this on, drive in, do your bit, and go." It's not that bad because David Yellow's got an absolutely incredible A2 with the hand painted 99th on it. It's those touches are really great, and there's enough of them, especially the sort of scenes when like the squadron are together and things like that, where like you said, you can pick out little individualizations that they have, because that was basically for the pilots and the ground crews, that was the only thing they could really put their own stamp on. Everyone goes on about nose art and things like that, but really, if you want to get into a really interesting look at air crew and ground crew, is look at the painted jackets. Because they tell incredible stories. Okay, I'm gonna throw this in right at Pima Air and Space Museum, friends of mine. There's the 390th Bomb Group Museum, and they have a whole display of their A2s and the sheepskin ones, the A somethings, all of them, and they're all painted. And chatting to the guys there, he says, in all the ones I have in stores, it's usually naked ladies on the back of them, because when you're 19 and it's 1944, you've not seen a naked lady. So you're probably going to paint one on your jacket to show that, I'm not just 19 or 20, I am a man. And there's lots of little things throughout Red Tails when the camera's doing the long shots of stuff of guys with personalized things. And it is a really nice touch. I know we're going
to... jumping off that, even in the scene, I was going to mention it, the gun cam theater, where they're having a little watch at the gun cam footage, which is really well done, actually. I think that's probably a nice little thing as well. If you look at a screen grab of the chaps watching that, guys have got their hats, the peaks up, peaks down, guys have got flaps down, the different way of wearing their jacket. Some have pipes, some have cigars, some have cigarettes. All this little stuff that really helps a movie like this, especially when the script isn't the best. You can enjoy more that's going on. It's people always go about, Kit and Banner Brothers really elevates it. Well, this is another thing where the kit really elevates the viewing experience. Even if you don't know, cerebrally you will be seeing it. And nobody, not like in what's the blooming film? Oh, the one about the
stuff and the things.
Oh, that one.
You know the one I mean.
That one.
It's not Hamburger Hill, directed by the same director, John Irvin, mid-90s, HBO. Come on, help me out.
Oh, what are we talking about here? What war?
World War II.
Okay. The one where they're in the forest in the winter. That one.
Yes, that one.
That one. Now we're all doing it. This is great radio, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening to this,
everyone's going to enjoy listening.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. This is gold, Rob. Leave this in.
Stick it in, because we're all. I can see that. It's not Saints and Soldiers, because that's the Spike Lee one, isn't it?
It's when trumpets fade. When trumpets fade.
Yes, the Hedgen Forest. Yeah. There you go.
Yes. So it's not like to get back on track there, to get the prop and all this baby back on track. It's like When Trumpets Fade, where they all look like they're out the packet. They all look like army men, soldiers with like one ammo belt. It's not like that. I'm glad it's not like that.
Yeah. It's not like a PT 216.
No.
Where they're wearing Molly and
modern prescription sunglasses.
You see, the thing is about this film, it's coming from Lucas and Lucas's production crews. So the detail is always going to be pretty good, because I mean, if you look at other films he's been involved in terms of production, they're always, the mise en scène is always quite good. It's not a huge surprise that it's one of the film's few strengths. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're bang on, because all Lucas films have good stuff in the background. Granted, they've taken that a bit far with the Easter egg hunts on the TV shows now and stuff. But yeah, you think Raiders, I think, is possibly the most perfect movie ever made.
Yeah,
and
sumptuous. The mise en scène in those films is sumptuous.
And
very good,
because it's like in the when the camera pans around the antique shop when they've gone to the old guy who does the reading a thing, they're digging in the wrong place. Favorite bit of the movie. As if you start pausing that, there's loads of stuff, and yes, there's like R2D2 and C3PO in like brass, and you look for those things, but just they haven't skimped on a panning shot. And it's the same here. It's like when they're in Easy and Lightning's hut, which again is very, very tidy, but there's just there's good quality stuff lying around to make you think, okay, yeah, fine. Which was one of the saving graces of the new Catch-22 was that the tents in that had fantastic set dressing for just the chaos that put it here. Whereas in that was the whole point of that book, was it was just nuts and everybody was a bit mad, so therefore everything around them was a bit mad. Here, these are ordered guys, but this is also their space. But it's that sort of thing that just makes you go, okay, yeah, fine. Is there? I've listened to this show for long enough, but I don't know. Is there an anti-Ali Tally? Because there's one thing I really want to complain about right now.
You can have it. You just go for it.
Of course,
it's fine.
It fits in perfectly with the ethos of the Ali Tally to complain about stuff too.
Cuba Gooding Jr.'s bloody pipe.
Really?
Oh, really? Is it not good?
Okay, whoever in that, if he showed up and went, guys, I'm gonna have a pipe, even if it's your character is based on this gentleman, he smoked a Sherlock Holmes pipe. There you go. There should have been someone on that set to go, bit much, Cuba, bit much. Because in every scene, it's him going, ha, yeah, I knew they had it in. And
he's giving it the pure MacArthur. Like he's giving it Gregory Peck in MacArthur, isn't he?
Is it The Simpsons when Bart does the to camera thing and he's got the bubble pipe?
Oh, yeah, with Hugh Hefner.
It's like, because the thing is never lit. I think there's like one shot of it actually smoking, and the rest of the time it's him just going ha and sticking it in the side of his face. You're like, there's the scene when he does the speech, you're fighter pilots now, which actually is a really well written scene because it's filling in a lot of the stuff that they've skipped, right? It's the one scene he doesn't have the pipe until he walks out the door at the back, and it works, right? The rest of the time, any scene when Cuba doesn't have a pipe in this movie, he's believable as a officer. As soon as he's got a pipe, you're like, dude, it's just like, he's like going, look at me, I'm in uniform and I've got a pipe because I don't have a plane in this movie.
I must admit.
Seriously, you're going to watch it now and you're going to, because I come back to this film reasonably often, right? Because I've got this thing in my head, which is the David Bohm paradox, right? So David Bohm was the sub-lantern that went into U-59, whichever one, and got the code books and the Enigma machine off of. He was sub-lantern on Bulldog, right?
Bon Jovi, right?
Yeah.
In
fascinating man. Yeah, incredible life afterwards. He was the historical advisor on U-571, right? He was the guy, and he supported, helped, and worked with everybody on that film because, in his words, we're not going to make this movie. I might as well help someone tell a story that may make people look at ours, right? That was his exact line when he was interviewed for it. And ever since I said that, I watch a movie like this going, they're trying to do something here. So I'll give it a couple of years and I'll come back to Red Tails and I'll watch it and I'll be left a bit flat because it's not far off being really good. It's just, it's missing the putt a couple inches to the right. Cause this is not a high point in cinema. Let's not beat around the bush. But it's missing an inch left or right. That's all it is. But unfortunately, it's consistently missing it just by enough that when it all adds up, it gets a bit what it is.
Before we dissect what's wrong with the film, let's talk about some of our favorite scenes.
Hello, Robbie here. Did you know you can support the podcast on Patreon? Join the supporting cast today and gain access to exclusive perks, such as discount codes, our monthly Patreon film votes, and the chance to get exclusive merchandise before anyone else. Search Fighting on Film on Patreon or find the link on our website. Thank you. Now back to the show.
Matt, you go first. What is your favourite scene from this film?
I really like the train scene.
I would agree.
Same.
Yeah.
We all picked that. We haven't all picked that.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I could
that's
throw
a rare one.
To be fair, the bar's not high.
Not really.
I found it incredibly hard to pick a favourite scene, I'll be honest. Purely because the film just seems to amble through. And I'll talk a bit more about this when I come to my criticism later. But it almost feels like there's very, very few stakes right up until maybe like the third act, where they go, "Oh, Lightning's going to get married. Oh, Junior's going to fly again." You know, and it's kind of like, okay, now
you can't have happiness in a film. You can't have happiness for military characters in a movie. Killing.
It ambles along quite nicely in terms of pace. So I found it hard to pick a specific. But carry on, Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on that because I agree with you. And I also think it ambles, but at a really strange pace, as in lots of stuff is happening, but nothing is progressing. Anyways, we'll come back to that. Train scene, right, is really good fun. Yeah, I'm a Typhoon guy, Tempest guy. I spend a lot of time looking at footage of guys shooting up trains. Dear friend Phil Blood will then have his rant about how they didn't shoot up nearly as many as everybody says because he's a train guy and he's done the math, right? I don't care. There is something great about watching a train getting shot up by an airplane. It's
it's fab, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's great.
The only time I've seen it done better is in, I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's a Czech film called Dark Blue World.
Yes.
Yeah. They basically blew the budget on having MH434, which is the famous Mark 9 Spitz, buzzing a train that they then blow up, right? The entire budget of the film essentially went on that scene. And it's great. In this, they literally have all the toys in the world to do it, and they do a pretty good job. Yeah, the Flak 38s on the back of the train look good. They've got they're box loaded, so they're about age appropriate as well for, say, a 43, 44. So the thing that lots of people don't realize is a lot of the flak weapons that the Germans had weren't belt fed. There's literally a guy chucking single rounds into a hopper, which is then getting injected into the breech of the weapon. So it's not till really, really late that they actually have a semi-belt fed weapon. So they've got the big box on the side, so that's what the gray thing is off on there. They've got the shield coming up on the front, which is the mesh thing. It looks really, really good. The only time it doesn't quite work is when both guns turn because lightning's coming in low down the front of the train, which nobody would do because it doesn't. It's not. You're taking a small target because, again, ladies and gentlemen, it's really hard to hit things with guns, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah. We've all like gone on the range and fired Lee Enfields and things like that. At 300 yards, with like no wind and someone behind you holding you steady, it's still bloody hard to get anywhere near a bull unless you're well in. When you're traveling at 250, 300 miles an hour, somebody's shooting at you, you're 20 odd years of age, and you're like high on all the adrenaline that your body can pump out at any one time. It's hard to hit something. So, the whole, we got to come in low from the front. No, just, that's the other thing, right? These guys break formation so often. We'll come back to that. But that train scene is great because they attack it. They are having trouble with the flak because a defended train is an incredibly hard thing to hit because A, it's moving, B, someone's shooting at you, and you've got to get through that and hit the one thing that probably is going to stop it. Because if you can stop the train, it's an easy target. Then you can fly up and shoot up the rest of it.
Yeah.
But that scene is done well because it's one of the few times, coming back to your P40 on a gimbal, where the camera movements are outside and around the cockpit. So as they're banking in, later in the movie, it cuts to wide shots of like planes doing synchronized half rolls and things like
To
that.
show off the P-51s
Yeah,
being
exactly.
cool. That's why.
Exactly. Whereas in this, there are quite almost Dunkirk-esque camera moves around the cockpit as they're like banking and they're looking and things. So you see, it's my favorite scene because it's actually showing a slight reality of the difficulty of doing something. Yes, they're complaining about strafing and things like that. Watch the Double Victory documentary, because they basically go, that job was awful because it was dangerous. All of the Tuskegee Airmen that they interview go like, that was the worst thing we had to do. Whereas these guys are going, oh, it's a train that should up because we're bored. Yeah. No, you've met these guys.
Yeah,
They've told you about it. Play the scene right. But you
can only say the lines you've been given, I guess, as well.
Yeah, and don't bump into the furniture.
Yeah, exactly. But I jump off it as well because, yeah, I agree. It is my favourite scene. I like it for different reasons. I obviously like the shooting up the train sequence looks fantastic. The CG is really good when it's really good in this. But I wish that they wouldn't have had that weird sequence with the B-17s and the P-51s peeling off over the title screen. I wish they just cut to this part of it, learning the chaps, seeing them doing their patrolling, seeing them attacking their train. Because what was that? What were their B-17s? Who were those guys? Too late. Don't worry. Here's your actual
ADR
cast,
is
guys.
awful in that. Awful.
What are you doing? I don't understand.
I wish the bomber crew's voices in that sequence are so flat.
It's really bizarre.
It's jarring. You're sat there like, oh wow, this is not how you open a film. Because it looks brilliant, looks great and all, but like, the voiceover.
It's weird, isn't it?
For me, I mean, my other thing I was going to mention was the impressive effect that 650 cal machine guns have on a light cruiser.
I love that. I unashamedly I love that sequence.
Hate that. Like every element of that just makes no sense.
I loved it because I knew
even 20mm cannons wouldn't have that effect on an armored light cruiser.
Exactly.
No wonder the Kriegsmarine didn't have a great record. Because they were too busy getting shot up by 650 caliber machine guns, and the whole ship blows up.
But in the I'm gonna jump off. I'm gonna.
I rib on it lovingly because it's a very nicely made sequence, but completely improbable.
I love that sequence because when he went for that ship, I was like, right, he's a goner. He's gonna get hit by one of them anti-aircraft rounds, and he's done.
No, he's got to get an answer from Sophia first, Rob.
Of course. But then he goes in and he blows it up. And I'm like, that's bloody great. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I thought, fun. Just fun.
Ship's gone boom. Love it. Nice.
Yeah, like it. Yeah. My brain was like, explosions, hooray.
Yeah.
But in The Mandalorian, when Mando, in his tiny tricked out Naboo starfighter, takes on an Imperial cruiser and blows it to Kingdom
You mean
Come,
the P-51 of space,
Rob? We're fine with that. Exactly, yeah. P-51 of the Republic. Yeah, when that happens, we're fine with it. For me, this is like the most Star Warsy part of the movie.
Yeah, but the P-51, the P-51 doesn't have proton torpedoes, Rob. That's why. At least the starfighter has torpedoes.
Going, it's great. It was hokey, but I loved it. Sorry.
So there is a great book by Daniel Holman, which is basically misconceptions about the Tuskegee Airmen, right? And the book, when you look at it, you think, oh, it's just going to be him dunking on it. It's not. It's him doing the math, right? And it's based on 2 papers he did for the Air Force Historical Research Agency in 2010. And the one I'm looking at now is the July 2013 one, right? And he's got 24 misconceptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll send this to you. It's funny because it's literally the script of Red Tails. Right? Because it's like, so you've got, so the first few are misconception of inferiority, which is, it's right to open the movie on the 1923 report that said that Negroes were basically cowards, right?
Yes.
That is really hard hitting.
Yeah.
I really like that.
And it's, I've read articles on that, and it's nuts because the thing is, the report's written 1923, so 1922 that they're doing the study. this is only about 4 or 5 years after the 369th and the 370th that had fought with incredible distinction on the Western Front, right? Harlem Hellfighters, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's nuts. So it's right to start that. But then literally it goes, we go through, never lost a bomber, deprived of an ace, first to shoot down jets. Tuskegee Airman sank a German destroyer. Yeah. And it's literally, superiority, inferiority. It's, the number of kills, things like that. It's really, really funny. But, that opening scene, you're right. I think it has no place in it, mainly because I don't like seeing B-17's wings folding up like B-24's, but that's a niche geeky thing because B-17 wings don't break. Basically, in this movie, if a B-17 gets shot down, its wings come off.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Isn't that like from Memphis Belle though, when they do that in Memphis Belle too?
It's because it's that shot of the B-17 with its engine on fire that then gets hit by flak.
That's it.
And its wing comes up and everyone goes, oh, it was hit by a bomb. Well, he's clearly got a fire in the wing, which is eating its way through the wing spar. And then you can clearly see they get hit by flak because it goes whoosh, right? It explodes. Where if it had just melted, it would have just folded. Now, the B-24, the Davis wing, they folded up all the time. But it's such an iconic image from the air war that it's become a trope.
Happens half a dozen times in the film, doesn't it? Almost every shot includes one.
Let's not be wrong. You get hit by 30. We're going to come back to being hit by a 30 millimeter cannon shell in a bit, but that is going to
it's hilarious.
Your day is messed up when that happens.
Oh
right?
Yeah.
But so it's planes are going to get blown apart and there's going to be chunks flying off them and stuff. But that whole opening sequence is. I know why they did it. But it doesn't need to be there. And
it doesn't make any sense. Why is it in there? Like they only come back to it later on when they have to escort themselves, and it's like stick with the fighters. But it's not like you've got one of the characters learning. Like maybe when they'd come back from that patrol and he'd learned that, I've just heard from my mate or something and he heard from someone that there was a bomber stream that the P-51s left them for dead. Oh my God, like you could have written in a tiny little thing about why that scene was in there. You could have made that work.
That's a good point because they do that in the film.
Yeah.
The sequence where they learn about the ME-262s is clearly an ADR voiceover added later. We're like, oh, watch out for those ME-262s. And they're like, oh yeah, what's that? And it's foreshadowing, but in the most clumsy way.
Have you heard about those jets? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I know, right? But it's just the thing that annoys me where you could have had a callback to that first scene where the guys go, remember that bomber stream that was left for dead? We're not going to be those guys. Like, that'd be fine.
All it needed is the gun camera scene from Memphis Belle.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That
sequence when John Lithgow starts reading the letters, which I believe are all Bomber Command letters, aren't they?
I think
I've heard that before. I've heard that.
Yeah.
Don't know for sure. I've heard that said.
Because Putnam wanted to make Bomber and couldn't get it done, they flipped it. But that sequence of the German gun cameras, it's silent. It's just the words over the top of it. I think that would have worked better if you needed that scene.
There's a fan edit there somewhere.
There definitely is. Yeah. We always say 4 fan edits are going to win the day eventually. So maybe as we always do, we're sliding into final thoughts. Maybe we should go into final thoughts.
I really want to like this movie. I watched it again yesterday, and you just it's sighing. It is shit. It's not a good movie, right? My bar for airplane movies is a film called Fighter Squadron, right? Which you seriously, guys, you have to watch because it is hilarious. So it's 1948. Directed by Raoul Walsh. It's got Robert Stack in it. It's P-47s and lots of P-47s flying around doing P-47 things with the stupid love story from Red Tails kind of worked into this, but where she's an American and there's a love triangle. It's, you know, it's nuts. It's like a by the numbers contract job for Raoul Walsh. But there's a scene in it, right, where they go, oh, Messerschmitts, 12 o'clock high, and it cuts, and it's 6 Mustangs painted up as Messerschmitts.
Amazing.
Right. And they roll in and they have this big dogfight thing. And then when it cuts to one of them getting shot down, it's literally a model of a 109. It's hilarious. And, you know, the classic sort of plane being dropped through the camera on
a
fire.
wire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my bar for these sorts of things. Because it's silly enough for us to look back on it and go, okay, it's 1948 and it's a rush job. And which is weird because, like, what, 2 years later they make 12 o'clock high, and you know, anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
So I have a particularly low bar for what I can enjoy when it comes to these things. This film fails because it doesn't know who its audience is. And this film fails because it's trying to be cool and respectful. And it fails because it's jumping back and forth between those two things. The scenes on the ground, the scenes when they're briefing. There's a fantastic little snippet on YouTube of Anthony Hemingway talking about the prayer circle scene, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those scenes where you're like, it just stops you for a second. And I think if they'd said amen and walked off, and then they do the repeating of what the colonel had told them, that, you know, we fight bit, which is good. But that scene kind of sums it up because it jars from one to the other. It's a moment of very religious men turning to God before they go. It's not a preacher on the ground going, you know, bless and all that, like the preacher underneath the engine of the B-17 that's in all those. It's not. It's pilots having a moment to share their faith and show their fear. Because that's the other thing that doesn't happen in this movie. Nobody's scared. You know, you guys were talking to James. There's the great scene when the phone rings in the Battle of Britain and the guy goes around the back and shuts up, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's none of that in this. And they're doing that because they're afraid to show these very human men as human. They have to be superheroes. And it fails for me because of that. Now, the thing with all the NCIS LA lady that's in it who speaks it, seriously, put the subtitles on this film because it makes even less sense for that. I'm going to get to the German in a minute, but you know, there's it's just because they don't know who they're pitching it at. And I think Chaz is quite right about this. He says the edit's wrong. And you said it in the intro. It's a bigger movie that they've cut down. The problem is they've cut it down to the wrong bits.
Yeah, they've cut the wrong parts out. I said that in my like summing up how I feel about it. It feels like 6 or 7 spec scripts for a TV series boiled into one film, where you start a story where you would start it before the credits roll, before the subtitles roll, on a TV show. So the bit where Junior goes to the PRW camp, the minute they say, you're going to help us escape or whatever, it would cut to the Tuskegee Airman credits. And then you would be in that episode, and that whole episode would be Junior getting out the PRW camp.
Yeah.
There'd be a whole episode on the Berlin raid. There'd be a whole episode on that.
The POW camp in Austria that he somehow managed to get back to.
The ground crew, exactly. But like, and that's where it annoys me. Where, as you said, Matt, it just chopped up too much. It doesn't know its audience. The villain is horrendously weak. I couldn't give 2 shits about that bloke.
Never show the baddies in these sorts of movies, right? They need
just
to be
them as planes.
Yeah, they need to be scary, and they're scary when they bounce you, right? You don't need comedy Nazi, right? Okay, here we go. I'm actually going to start referring to my notes now, right? So when you turn the subtitle, so in the actual
all
cut,
of this has been off the dome from Matt till here. It was very impressive.
Yeah. So when you watch this, and when I watched it in the cinema,
German baddie's only line is, "My God, those pilots are African."
Oh no! There's a couple. In the first one, when they roll in, he says, "Show no mercy."
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and when he's shooting easy up in the 262 at the end of the movie, his line is, "Die, you foolish African."
Wow.
Right? And
it's just hokey and needless.
But it's like, I kind of know why it's there, because probably in the longer script there was what the Germans were doing in Italy, right? There was probably something about that. Now, these are the most well-supplied Germans in 1944 I have ever seen on film anywhere, right? Because that airbase is packed,
it's hilarious.
right?
It is,
Yes,
I love that.
Yeah, yes, I know 400 tons of supplies were coming through the Berner Pass through early 1944 a day, right? They're not getting to an airbase that's like just off north of Rome, which is clearly
in this
where
film,
that
they were all going to that airbase, just
exactly right. But that all of that, the sort of thing where he stood at the end,
all of the explosives and fuel were all going to that airfield.
What's he doing holding a K-98 at the end of that scene as
helping
well?
Matt, he was helping shoot down the enemy aircraft, obviously.
Right, that's it. That whole comedy Nazi thing. Okay, another thing, right? Okay, now you've got me going, right? First scene, they come in and you get the weird like yellow swastika thing on the tails of the aircraft, right? Camera pans around to below the cockpit, and they've got the victory markings along the side of the cockpit, right? I still remember seeing that for the first time and going, fuck off, right? Because German aircraft had their victory markings on the tail, right? And you had the bar and the dot depending on the kill, right? And it's like, oh, the trope is you have kills down the side, so we have to show that this guy is good. Therefore, let's put lots of markings on, and the markings are all over the place. Pause it; it's nuts. But it's like he's got his nose art, and then it's like surrounded by kills. You don't need that. It's bad enough that you have. It would be like in Memphis Belle, right? Cutting to one of the guys in the Bouchons, and him going, "Show no mercy, boys. Show no mercy." The fighters are turning back. There's a lot of problems with Memphis Belle, but it keeps you with the people you need to be with. You're trying to have an affinity with these guys. And even as poorly written as they are, for a guy who then was at this point in time writing 12 Years a Slave, I mean, how did this happen? You are constantly being taken away from them. Now, the stuff in Washington, I get, right? That's kind of historically accurate, right? Because you've got Benjamin O. Davis, who's the commander of the 99th and then the 332nd. Incredible character. So go away and Google Ben Davis. First Black general in the U.S. Air Force. Incredible career. Incredible man, right?
Yeah.
And Terrence Howard does a reasonable facsimile of him. But, you can see what he's doing. The old man's gone back to Washington to fight our corner. Yeah, great, right? And he does it quite well. There's a few lines which are a little bit too flippant, but he's fighting the fight and it's a movie. Now, you understand the gravity of the battle that these guys were facing, right? They were, the Air Force kept putting people in charge of these units who were straight up and down racist, which is why you then have the mutiny at Freeman Field in 1945 with the B-25 unit that never got deployed, in which they segregated the base, and then the pilots decided to go in threes to try to order a drink. This is a real double war these guys are fighting. So that needs to be there. So why cut to the comedy blonde Nazi with a bad dye job? Let's be honest. There is no need for that, because
it detracts a lot. I got to admit, like him being the way he is, I was like, well, Messerschmitt, a German jet fighter is scary enough. I don't care about the person flying it, really. And you're already doing too much in this movie as it is. I've just got here. It's like weak villain, weak characterization for everyone, and lots of subplots that muddle.
Well, Bryan Cranston's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. It's like, but he's, I don't know. It's really annoying. it's annoying because I can't categorize it because I don't want to say it's inherently a bad movie because I did enjoy parts of it. It's it's just like when your parents say, I'm not mad at you, I'm just disappointed because it's what this film could have been a lot more. If it had just had a bit more refinement, if someone had been in the editing room and going like, hang on a minute, let's cut that out, let's trim this here, let's maybe not use, because I've got a thing with these movies, you have to have set pieces, but when it's an aerial film, they just want to chuck in every single dogfight they can. Use them sparingly. I want some time on the ground to get to know these people. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why 12 O'Clock High is so good. That's why Appointment in London is so good, because you spend 85, 90% of your movie learning about these people. So when they go up in the air, it's incredibly fucking dangerous and you care about them. And this is where Red Tails doesn't do that. When they're in the air, didn't really care who came back and who didn't, because I could pick you out. I could pick him out. It's like, well, Little's going to get killed now because he's just told the woman he loves him. It's very by the numbers at the end, and that's
where as soon as
she
says yes, he's dead.
Yeah,
he's dead. Yeah, exactly. And it's desperately trying to keep its PG-13 rating, not having him blown to smithereens by cannon fire.
And just to say, that's the cleanest and tidiest 1940s Italian town ever, right? Because because it's
all CGI.
Yeah, but it's I did actually, I meant to write this down.
It is all CGI.
The town just north of the Foggia airfields was the scene of a massive SAS cock-up that turned into this big battle. So the town was wrecked, right?
Cock-up? The SAS? What?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But it's, and to be fair, southern Italy was not the picturesque holiday destination it was even before the war. It was a very, very deprived place. That's why people were living in caves, right? And yet it's like, picture postcard Italy with picture postcard Italian lady.
She's there on a veranda, putting her washing out, waving to the flyers.
It's not good. It's really not. And the final scene, he's going head to head. I'm not going to get into the love story because it isn't. It doesn't work.
It's worthless. It's just in there for in their sake, isn't it? That's the whole thing.
Hang on. At least she wasn't mistaken for a prostitute, and B, she didn't have kids.
Okay.
Flyboys cliches avoided.
Flyboys cliches were worse.
Catch 22 cliches as well there, because all the women in that are prostitutes or are willing to sell themselves. Yeah. Okay, let's do the 30mm cannon thing, right? Oh, the other thing is, whenever an ME-109 gets hit, the MK pods underneath the wings smoke. What? If you shoot someone in the engine, smoke is not going to come out of a bolted-on cannon pod underneath the wing. No. Look for that next time you watch it.
I never noticed that before, ever.
Oh, mate.
I'm a Luddite when it comes to planes anyway. So, it blows my mind.
A plane with holes in it has smoke coming out of strange places. It don't come out of there, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, okay, fair enough.
Okay, so let's do this, right? David Oyelowo gets hacked to pieces. Well, he should get hacked to pieces at the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Now, 262 throttled up. Now, the other thing is a 262 doesn't use the throttles a lot, much like first generation jets. You kind of set it and you leave it. So, because they just would spool up too slow. So they would set the power, they dive in, right? So he's probably closing at, let's pick a number that's reasonable, about 450 miles an hour, right? Which is a lot faster than a Mustang would be going. Mustang is coming at him at, say, 300 miles an hour. So you've got a closing speed of 750 plus miles an hour. And for 4 seconds in this movie, they are shooting at each other, right? Yeah. I timed it. It's the longest 4 seconds ever. And okay, in 4 seconds, the 4 MG MK103s in the front, it's only going to be spitting out in real life not that many shells, because it was not a high rounds per minute weapon, because it's literally throwing an artillery shell at you, right? Now, both planes are getting shot up. David Oyelowo is in the cockpit, and in the first time I saw it, the cockpit initially goes boom. There's lots of stuff. There's obviously a good squib there that puts smoke and sprinklers and things in it. And then the squibs go off on him, and it's little PG-13, as Matt was saying, pop, pop, pop. Right now, one of two things would have happened in real life. The engine would have exploded because it would have hit the fuel lines or something and basically just ripped the front off. Or if it had managed to break it, he'd have vast quantities of Merlin engine entering through a fuel tank and then him, right? But he shoots down the German, and the line is, "You might be the best pilot who ever lived," right? It's terrible. Yeah. And
there's way too much cockpit quipping in this as well.
Yeah. But the shot then shows them still at altitude, right? They're still quite high up at this point because you can see the bombers in the background. So they're at 20,000 odd feet, right? He then removes his mask, which is what he's doing throughout this whole movie, going, "Oh, I don't like my mask," to basically go, "Oh, look, it's David Oyelowo," right? And he then says, "I can't breathe." Dude, you're at altitude and you've just had your lungs shot out. Of course you can't breathe, right? You're just sitting there going, "Die gracefully."
Yeah.
Man. But then there's 4 minutes of him falling to earth gracefully. And you're just like, what would have been better is if he just went.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It'd have been more like shocking for the audience. For any remnant of anyone watching that cared about him, it would have hit a lot harder. And I think that's a problem. The guy,
Michael B. Jordan goes. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's gonzo. Yeah. He gets hit and he's off. And that's it. You see him screaming and he's going down. Nobody burns in this movie, right? Unless you're on a bomber. The opening scene.
The guy that crashes at the airfield, he burns.
Deke. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. That thing rolled. He had no head.
Oh, yeah,
what are they pulling out of that airplane?
Like toast. Yeah, definitely.
You've got, these things were flying.
Fine, though.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be.
That's what I was talking about earlier when I said there's zero stakes. That dude rolled
there's no stake
on fire, and he got pulled out, and he said he's going to be fine. It's PG.
Yeah, it is PG.
There is a lot that is a gnat's tadger away from being really quite good. My only hope is with the renaissance of Black filmmakers that we're having at the moment, right? That they will watch Masters of the Air and go, "That was terribly white." And they will turn to the Tuskegee Airmen, and you will have a new generation of Black filmmakers, of which at the moment they are smashing it. Ladies and gentlemen, just go watch Nope and tell me that you were not affected by that, right? Hell, Creed, I would love Ryan Coogler to take on, the Tuskegee Airman.
Good shout.
Right? Yeah. But I think the thing that this film has done, and that people still talk about it, and almost every single one of our big comments on social media was, "This should have been better. They deserved more." In this,
and I think that's it, isn't it? That really sums it up. Is that it just deserves a better story, and it's like 60% there. It just needed a lot of refinement. I mean, Matt, do you want to give us a closing sentence, Matt, for this week?
For me, I completely agree. It's lacking in a number of key places, and it just needed that little extra to push it over the edge. A little bit of refinement in the script, perhaps a little bit better edited. There's a great cast in there, but they're poorly used. Some of the aerial CG looks good, even today. Still looks pretty good in terms of production value, but a lot of the ground stuff is overused. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be on my rewatch, and I know that Matt loathes it in a way, in a love-hate kind of approach, but for me it was just a little bit too mediocre. I think that's what my takeaway from it was.
Yeah, I think that really is it, isn't it?
It's a 2-star
especially when
movie.
That production company, that director, that cast are all there.
Yeah, it's got everything going for it, and it falls, and it's in there somewhere, and that actually brings Unofficial Aviation April to a close this week. I think we hit some big ones. We did some necessary ones you might not have seen before. And next week, we are going to be talking to Tom Petch about his film The Patrol, which is set in Afghanistan, which is one of the rare British Afghanistan movies.
So yes, do join us for our chat with Tom Petch next week. And thank you so much to Matt for joining us. Do go and check out the Damcasters podcast. Fabulous podcast if you love all things aviation. We're so pleased to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. This has been a lot of fun.
Great. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.